Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Her Resources podcast, where we have conversations that every HR leader and leaders in general is thinking about, but not always willing to say out loud. Today's episode is definitely one of those conversations. We're diving into a question that sits at the center of everything happening right now. Who is the future of work really being designed for? Because as AI accelerates and organizations rethink roles, productivity, and cost, HR is no longer just supporting change. We're being asked to help define it. And that comes with real tension. How do you lead when jobs are being reimagined or even eliminated? How do you guide leaders to make responsible decisions about AI, not just efficient ones? And how do you support the people whose lives and livelihoods are directly impacted? I couldn't think of a better person to have this conversation with than Stacey Lewis, someone who brings both strategic clarity and deep humanity to the role of HR leadership. This is not a surface level conversation. This is about real decisions shaping the future of work and what it means to lead through them. Welcome to the new chapter of the Her Resources podcast. I'm your host, Linda Misegadis, and I'm so excited to be stepping into this next season with you solo. This podcast has always been about amplifying women's voices, exploring the challenges we face in HR, leadership, and life, and sharing the tools and inspiration we need to thrive. This is more than just a podcast, it's a community, a space for us to learn, lead, and lift each other up. Welcome to this new beginning. This is the Her Resources podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to the studio, Stacey.
Thank you, Linda. You know, I'm always here.
Ah,
I'm
I
always
would
here
love
for
it.
you, especially talking about one of my favorite topics. I know we call it HR. You know, you and I
Yes,
talk. I think we definitely, the first thing we need to do as we think about the future is change it, is move from personnel to human
yes,
resources. Now, it could be
yep,
human assets or people, business, culture, and strategies. But one, we
yep.
need to change the name, right? We need
I
to show
completely
to
agree.
be progressive.
We
Um,
definitely do. I think it makes such a good point. Well, and before we get into this, I wanted to ground us in something because what we're talking about is not theoretical anymore. You and I were chatting about
mm,
this. You read the articles and everything. It sounds real good on paper, but McKinsey is estimating that up to 30% of hours worked globally could be automated by 2030. And Goldman Sachs is saying AI could impact 300 million full-time jobs. So this isn't a future conversation. I mean, this is a right now leadership conversation. And what's really interesting to me is HR is right in the middle of it, but I don't know what role they're really getting to play being in the middle of it. I kind of feel like they're maybe on the sidelines, hoping they get tagged in to come and be a part of the conversation. But I don't know if they
mhm.
really are because they weren't a part of the conversation before AI came along. So I'm not sure how leaders are really pulling them in to be a part of the conversation now.
Wow. We could be here 5 days. We could be here 5 days talking about this. I think it's so much to unpack. So let's start with HR in general, right? You and I are both, I would definitely say I have a penchant for human resources, right? I grew up in this space, 40 years in this space, and I still
Yeah.
love it. Um, with that being said, we are contending with so much right now.
Yeah.
We're contending with AI. We're
Yes.
contending with how we are servicing our clients. We are contending with still having a strong presence and voice. I don't even want to talk about a seat at the table because if you are an HR leader and you're still worrying about you're at the table, this ship has left you, right? I mean, it
Yes.
just really
Yes.
has
Yep.
left.
I totally agree with
Yeah,
that.
we we
Yes.
we we can't talk about that anymore.
Mm-mm.
So when you say where is HR right now,
Yeah.
I first want to talk about what we're contending with.
Okay.
I know we're going to talk about AI, and this whole notion, I don't even want the
Mm-hmm.
notion that AI is going to replace jobs. I think we're seeing that, right? You saw that Amazon, right? If I'm mistaken, just a couple of years ago or last year, eliminated a large part of their workforce. A lot of those positions were human resources because I know somebody who was impacted by this because of AI, right? So it's already happening.
It is.
The problem that we're having or that I see is HR needs to be the ones having the conversation with the organization,
Yeah.
even though we're the ones who are going to be the beneficiaries of the probably the elimination.
Yeah,
And that's a hard pill to swallow. I
that
mean,
is.
we're so much is put on it's a hard pill to swallow.
Mhm.
I get it. And I'm just going to talk to you straight. I get AI. It is a tool. AI is a
Yes, and
valuable
that is
tool.
all it is. It's another technology, it's a
It's
tool, it's not a
another
human
technology
replacement.
tool.
Yes. Yes.
With that being said, you still need the touch. So
Yes.
leaders, practitioners, influencers, contributors, they're going to have the technology piece, but the organization's still going to need the touch. And being able to sell that, one, we shouldn't have to sell it. But two, when you have organizations saying we need efficiencies and we need to cut back and times are difficult and so we can do X, Y, and Z,
Mhm.
it's a hard sell. Coupled
It
with the
is.
fact, Linda, we are still contending with our clients, employees.
Yes,
I'ma
yes.
say it because nobody else wants to say it. There is a battle in the
Mhm.
workplace between the organization and employees.
Yes,
Period.
there is.
Okay?
Yes, there is. Yep.
I'll say it.
Yep.
You say we talk about anything on here,
We talk about
employees
anything on here.
are saying what they're going to do, what they're not going to do, right? They have made, and I'm going to talk about the one subject that's driving everybody crazy is return to office. Okay?
Oh,
I'm going to
oh,
say it.
yes. Yes,
Okay?
yep.
Because it
Mhm.
comes into here. I'm coming to work. I'm not coming to work. You're responsible for my child care. You're responsible for all. That has
Mhm.
nothing to do with work.
No. Mm-mm.
Now, let me put meal on that because before people be like, oh my gosh. The organization has the responsibility. I'm going to this AI, the future of what HR has to confront, but I don't want to just relegate it to AI because we're losing so much putting AI in front. We're
Oh, I
losing the
agree.
weightier matters.
Yes, 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 yes.
I said this to you before. It is not it's not the company's responsibility about your child care.
No,
That's not the company's responsibility.
no, it's not.
What is their responsibility though is to create a workplace, right? A environment where that you can thrive and you are seen and you're valued and you're heard, that we are creating spaces for you to be successful. But what has happened now is in this quest to honor the whole employee,
Mhm.
we've lost that because now whole
Yep.
employee brings in. And people are gonna be like, why she just talking about childcare? Okay, we can talk about elderly
Right, we talk
care.
about anything.
It could
Yes,
be anything. I
exactly.
take care of my
Yep,
mother, elderly care, the
exactly.
personal part of it. Not
Yes.
dismissing that, but that has creeped into the workplace now that it is your responsibility, the
Mm,
company's responsibility. And so there's this push, there's this fight, there's this push, there's this fight. And why the client and the employer fighting, you got all these things happening.
yes.
Jobs going to be eliminated.
Yep,
How are we utilizing technology, right?
right.
And people may struggle with this, but we got to we got to make the main thing.
Yes.
Because if we don't, you ain't going to have to worry about do you have childcare at home because you're not going to
Mm-mm.
have a job. I'm going
That's
to say
right.
it. We got to put
Yes.
things back in their perspective or elderly or whatever that is. And that,
Yes.
for me, Linda, is really where my heart is. I work with so many clients. I get so many daily phone calls where my clients are like, I don't know what to do. We have people, just aggravated and having all kind of situations because X, Y, and Z that's going on. We should not be insensitive as an organization. I will never, as a person who loves
No, I
HR,
agree. Oh, yeah, yeah.
but we still got to keep the main thing, and it's
Yes,
work.
it is. It's
I'm
work.
gonna
I
stop. I'm gonna
agree
let you
with
jump.
you.
Right. So
Yeah, no, I totally
jump in.
agree. Well, and I like that you said that there because I was just having a conversation about this the other day with one of my colleagues and that there is a mind shift that also happened where, and I agree with you, I think that you have to create an environment where employees feel safe, where they can,
Yeah.
I always joke about the fact that when my kids were little, I pretended like I didn't have kids because you didn't call in sick for your children or
Correct.
because I was already questionable if women were
That's
capable of
right.
being in the
That's
workforce, while
right.
I certainly mothers weren't capable of being in the
That's
workforce,
right.
right? And so your whole approach changed. What I'm seeing now is, we exactly what you're talking about is that people also they don't wanna work when they're supposed to be working. I'm like, if the business functions from 9 to 5, we can have flexible work schedules. I'm cool with that. But if
Mhm.
I need you between the hours of 9 to 5, then I need you to be there and be available between those hours. That is what I pay you for, because the reward in that is the paycheck, right? And
Right.
I think that that is you're absolutely right in that that's getting lost. And what's interesting right now too, there was Gallup showed that only you talked about the human side of it. In a Gallup study, they said right now that only 1 in 5 employees strongly trust leadership during times of change. And so we have all those things that you were just talking about that are kind of kind of still falling off of the COVID times as we're trying to adjust back to what the work looks like. Then you're right. We have this new massive technology that comes in and is
Mhm.
shaking things at its core.
Mhm.
And so we're seeing all this transformation happening. Employees don't have their confidence for themselves, and they don't have confidence in the leadership to actually lead
That's
them
right.
through it. So,
I think
yeah.
that's I mean, and you know, what you say, Linda, is just so profound. HR is contending with a lot. And when we're talking about, I think the future of work isn't neutral. What are HR leaders being confronted with now? And yes, AI is at the beginning, is at the front of that. But I love what you said. It's a tool. And my concern is we're losing the spirit of work. We're losing
Yes,
the spirit
yes.
of work
So
because we're
true.
focusing on this tool that can make work, is allowed to make work, give some efficiencies to work. But putting all the focus on this, we're losing the spirit of work. And so that's why, and I talked about this. My heart breaks when I'm on, social media and I see people saying, don't ever go to HR. I hate HR. Now, let me talk to you real.
Yes.
As HR leaders, a lot of that we've put on ourselves. Come on. We have,
I
Linda.
agree,
Okay.
yep, I
Okay.
totally agree,
Okay.
yep,
Yeah.
mhm, yep,
I want
yep,
to make sure a lot of that we have put on ourselves for the way that you started, because in the organization we are just seen as a necessary
yep.
evil.
Just there to, do the tasks, and right now with all the layoffs happening, that puts
Correct.
HR right, so because everyone assumes that HR is at the center of those layoffs, where
Correct.
HR rarely is at the center of those. They're there they might have to be the ones to do the hard jobs, right, to
Right.
notify the employees and put the packages together and do all of that, but if anyone thinks that HR is the one that is sitting at the table telling them, "Hey, we need to do layoffs," that's just not
That
true.
it's just not true, right? You're right.
Yeah,
It's just not true. As a matter of fact, conversely, if you are a strong HR leader, you're at the table, you should be saying, "Hey, if we do this, these are the things that we can consider." I know, and I know you have in your career, I've been at the table in a lot of conversations and I've put out the human centered part of it. And
absolutely.
and because of my credibility, in some instances, it was definitely considered and
Yeah,
received.
absolutely.
And in some instances, they're like, Stacey, stay in your lane. I said, okay,
Right,
I said what I need to say. This
right.
is what the outcome is going to be. I
Yeah,
totally do not agree, but I'm going to go out, right? And
yeah,
I'm going to implement what you say.
yeah.
So I say that to say I'm really glad you're having this conversation, because that whole that's my biggest concern about AI. Like my biggest concern is, if people, and a study was done, and I should have brought it up for you, where I was at a conference not too long ago and the speaker was talking about AI, and he was saying that he did it was a professor, and he was saying that a research was done, and one out of four individuals said if they appreciate AI, but if they needed to talk about a personal matter, they did not want to have to go through a bot, right? Where
Yes.
you have to say,
Yeah.
press one for, they wanted to talk to
Right.
someone, right?
Yep.
So, how do we balance this, Linda, where you have the next era of leaders coming in the workplace, right? Because, I
Mhm.
hate titles,
Yep.
who grew up on technology. It's
Yeah.
instantaneous, right? And it
Yeah.
worked to, so that bot works for them. One, two, three, whatever,
Yep.
exactly. To where but you still have you have a whole plethora. We have five generations in the workplace where
Exactly. Yes,
just
that's
that,
exactly it. Yeah.
how do you balance that? How do you
Mhm.
balance that?
Hey everyone, we're the Her Resources podcast, where women share real stories, real lessons, and the resources that help them succeed. We're always looking for inspiring women, business leaders, creatives, educators, and changemakers who want to share their journey and empower others. If that sounds like you, we'd love to hear your story. Reach out to us at contact@herresourcespodcast.com and let's start the conversation. No, I totally agree. People are
I
really struggling with it. Well, it was interesting too. I was listening to a Senate House hearing on,
Mhm.
or a Senate hearing. I guess it's not a Senate House hearing, a Senate hearing on the workforce. And what they were talking about was around AI. It's this special committee that's been formed. One of the politicians asked one of they call them, I guess, witnesses who come in to provide their expert opinions about, what's going on in the world today, or in the country today about AI. And one of the politicians asked one of the witnesses about, the removal of all of these jobs. Now, this particular person, he was an older man, so he's been around a long time.
Mhm.
And he said, I'm very concerned about the elimination of all of these jobs. What guardrails are we putting in place? The economic impact that that's going to have. The person who was the witness, she was not real young, but she was younger. She said, I'm not worried about it at all. She said humans were created. We're inherently designed to work. It's just going to create innovation, and we're going to find new things to do and new ways
Yeah.
to approach things. And I thought, okay, on one hand, it was an interesting thought. I'm like, okay, you're right, and we've managed to throughout our history of time, we have figured out ways to do new things, better things, and create that. But this type of technology that we're talking about today, this is different than when the internet came around and when, even when robots, I mean, because AI is not new too. I think that's always important to put out, right?
That's a good point.
AI
It's
in
not
itself has been
right.
around since I think the 70s, maybe even earlier than that they've
Right.
had AI in place, always as a tool, always being used. What's changing all of that is more of this agentic and generative AI that is creating this human-like experience, right? So it
Mhm.
moves from being or it feels like it's shifting from being just a tool to replacing humans. And that, I think, is the piece that maybe she missed in that conversation, is that
Mhm.
we're not talking about a new technology that's coming along to create innovation. Only so many people are gonna get a seat at the table to be
Mhm.
the leading in that, right? You still have to think about the human impact. And so to just say, like, if you or I lose our jobs tomorrow type of thing, that we're just gonna go out there and create something new for ourselves, that
Mhm.
is a little naive, I think, in believing that you think that all these people are gonna be able to do that. There has to be some level of guardrail and guidance to help get people there, because we have always done that. This technology
Correct.
is changing things, and what leaders are doing is not paying enough attention to the
Right.
impact that it's having on the humans, which is what
On the
you're
human.
talking about, and that's where HR really could help.
Especially since we're the most vulnerable.
Most vulnerable.
I
Yes.
and as it relates to organization, I think HR is one of the top 3 to be most vulnerable because we're already the the industry is viewed as touchy-feely, rules and all of those things. And so, I mean, if I wanna know the policy around leaves, I can just type it in and they can tell me. If I want to get interview questions for My
Yeah.
position, I could
Yeah.
just type it in. You could just tell it if I want to know the budget, if I want to know my FTEs, if I want to know, do a job analysis, I could
Yeah.
just type in, ask the question, and you give that, right? So that is the mindset, right? The mindset is that we can just
Yep, we can
do it out.
eliminate it because it's all administrative
It's
functions. We
all it,
can do the
right.
paperwork, we can automate it all. We don't need you to do any of that, which is, I think, when Josh Bersin was talking about that 30 to 40% of the
Yes.
jobs going away, that's what he's talking about
Right.
are all of those clerical pieces of HR. They are gonna go away, and so where do you find yourself when that happens?
You know, when you were speaking, I was really thinking about, because I've really been thinking about this a lot, of how do we as HR leaders really think about work for the future, and with everything that we're contending with. And
Mhm.
here's one thing I will say that we need to do. We need to be honest
Eh,
with our workforce.
yes, we do need to be honest. I'm so glad you said that, Stacey. That has been bugging me at its core for it's always bugged me with organizations and the lack of honesty and transparency. Some are really good. I've worked for some organizations who are amazing at communicating and being transparent, and I've worked for others that are awful about that piece of it. But right now, more than any other time, you have to be honest with the workforce and you have to tell them the truth about what's happening so they can be responsible for themselves and go create those other
Correct.
opportunities or take
Correct.
advantage of reskilling or take that class that the company is offering. So if the company is offering AI certification, well, by
Correct.
God, take the AI certification where maybe in
Correct.
the past you would have been like, I don't have time to do that training. Right now, it's time for you to really take control of that, but you can only do that if we're being honest with the people in
Correct.
their jobs.
We have to be honest
Yeah.
and transparent,
Yep.
because when you are honest and transparent with employees, then the organization does, because right now, which is at the core of my, I just, the bane of my existence, is us versus them. And I always tell you, work is a relationship. When work is a relationship, and I go back in my natural relationship, one of the things that my husband and I have been married for 33 years, there's a sense of honesty there. He knows what I know what he knows. Now, I understand that maybe employees don't need to know everything, but it
Yes,
doesn't mean that
that's
they
right.
should know nothing.
No,
Because
I
what we've
agree.
created now is they see that this big entity
Yes, yes. So
is
true.
against them. And so when somebody feels they're against them, they conduct themselves accordingly. When
Mhm.
now we need the organizations to bring the employees in and say, hey, listen, this is what we are doing. This is what we are contending with. This is the truth. Now you've allowed, and I love the word that you said, the employees to have the ability to be responsible for how they contribute to that. Not
Yeah.
accountable, because you can't hold another person to be
Mm-mm.
accountable. Only
Nope,
a person can hold
nope.
themselves to be accountable. You can hold
That's
them
right.
responsible for the action, because we got to get away with
Yeah.
that. She didn't hold me accountable. I can't. A
Nope.
person has to hold themselves accountable. You can
They
hold a
do, I
person
agree.
responsible. So now what you have is, now that I know this, now that
Mhm.
you've brought me in to it, to a level of understanding
Right.
and what my role will be, because here's the other
Yes.
part of it. Let's talk real, Linda. When
Mhm.
you're transparent, you gotta be and I'm not gonna say caution, but when you're transparent with individuals, you gotta let them know what their role is. Because if you
Yes.
don't, you will create
Mhm.
something different. Okay?
Yes, you will. Yep, that is very
Because then
true.
employees, right, will feel that we're gonna go with it. But
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing we have to do. We have to be honest. We have to bring the workforce in and say, this is what we're working with. I love what you said. This is what we're contending with. And if we don't start having these conversations about reskilling, and I love that, not this fake reskilling, but really real skilling. You said the young lady said in the hearing, I'm not worried about humans. We've been able, okay, we'll start having those conversations. Hey, listen, y'all, I want to tell
Yeah.
you, based on what we're seeing, based on what we're doing, this is what the future could look like. And
Yeah.
here's how the organization HR Interrupted is going to be aligned with you in the relationship. This is what we're going to do. And this is
Yes.
what we want you to do. Talk to us. Let's do a human centered design. Those
Right.
conversations have to happen and not be, how do I say this? And not be worried about, I don't want to say the fallout because organizations do need to be mindful, but we got to
Yeah,
change the way that we entreat each other. It's just,
we
oh, you don't
do.
need to know. No, you
Yeah.
need to know. You need
I
to
am
know
an
that in 90.
adult, and I should be able to be treated like an adult, and you should be able to share that. Now, I may not behave like an adult with that information, right?
Correct.
Maybe I throw a big fit. Maybe I leave the organization and I was a valuable person. That's
Hmm.
my choice because
Right. They
I
don't
could
change the information.
they don't change the information. Exactly.
Information
You've
still the
got
same.
to be honest with people so that they understand what's happening. And to your point, there are certain things in corporations that
Yeah.
are governed by
Right.
laws and regulations that you
Correct.
can't tell employees all that stuff.
Correct.
Nobody's telling you to tell them all of that. But if we know that jobs are going to be significantly impacted, I think about all of the young people right now who are thinking about their careers and their future. Look at the ones who are in college that are getting ready to graduate. My guess is their degrees and their type of work throughout that degree didn't adapt to the way the working world is today. So now what are they going to do when they were already struggling to find entry-level jobs out of college because there's no real such thing as an entry-level job
Correct.
anymore. And
Correct.
we've told them we're eliminating all of those white-collar entry-level jobs. What are you gonna do for all of those people? And that's where I think she was naive in her comment about saying, "I'm not worried about it because people were designed to work." Yes, they were, but they have to have a purpose. They have to know what they're able to do, like what the
Hmm.
future looks like. We
Hmm.
owe that to human beings to know the
Hmm.
impacts that this is having and what we should be planning for so we can be responsible on our own. Because otherwise, what's
Hmm.
going to happen is we're not going to be responsible and we're going to try and hold companies and the government and everybody else accountable for what's going to
Absolutely.
happen to us because you never gave us the chance to take care of ourselves and do something for ourselves instead of having something done to us, right?
I love the analogy about how we are preparing the next era of workplace leaders.
Yeah, right?
The model has to change.
It
The model
does.
that we have now, it to your point, it doesn't necessarily, and this will raise, this will raise a lot of
Yep.
opinions about it, but that's okay. We're okay.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
everybody, we love diversity and perspective, right?
We absolutely
Equity
do.
is not just an external how you see race, and it's diversity and
No,
perspective. I love
that's
that.
right.
We got to change that model because
Yeah,
I'm in the people business culture strategy space, HR, so are you.
exactly.
I
Yep.
have my friends call me all the time. My child graduated from college X, Y, and Z 2 years ago. Their kids still can't find a job, and they're hit with all these loans, right? I, people say, well, if you major in so and so, well, yeah, I mean that there's true. There's definitely some spaces that you can do that, but that whole model in itself of how you get this, you learn this, you get a job, that even is going to have to look different. How are we
It
preparing the
is.
workplace, right?
Yeah.
In my opinion, this is my humble Stacey opinion, I think you're going
Yeah.
to see a pendulum back to the skilled trades
I think you're
because
right.
that's one area with AI. I don't know if an AI person can come in and
Mhm.
build. I think
Yeah,
they can help you with the blueprints,
I think so
but I don't
too.
think that
Yep.
they can come in and build because you in HR, we completely moved away from the skilled trades.
Totally eliminated the skill trades. Yeah.
And now, right, people are moving. We completely eliminated the skilled trades. I think I shared the story with you when I was at my last employer. We were looking for a welder. We were paying at the time $65 an hour just for you to have a high school diploma and show that you had at least a year of welding experience because we couldn't
Yeah.
find
Couldn't
anybody.
find anyone.
You have people coming out of
Exactly.
college couldn't make that.
Are you ready to take your podcast to the next level? Let LGM Productions help you sound your best. We specialize in podcast editing, production, audio restoration, and mixing, ensuring every episode is polished, professional, and ready to wow your audience. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned podcaster, we'll handle the technical details so you can focus on sharing your voice. Partner with LJM Productions today and hear the difference.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we're talking about what's interesting that's happening around all of this too, is that we want to bring manufacturing back to the country, but we have no skills to support manufacturing. We got rid of all of those types of jobs and organizations, and then now we're also talking about the elimination. We want to get rid of all of the immigrants who have come into this country. Um, well, somebody's got to plow the field. Somebody's gotta go out there and do all of these things. You most who do you have the skills to go and do that? I mean, I don't. I don't have the nobody taught me how to do that sort of work.
Right.
I don't know how to do any of that. And to exactly to your point, we're talking a lot. It's interesting because I see this big shift around the frontline worker and the focus on the
Mhm.
frontline worker. And
Mhm.
so I do think you're right. What's gonna happen is we're gonna see a shift towards the skills and
Yes.
trades, but we're not preparing the generations that are immediately going to be stepping into that area. And that's where I feel like as leaders in organizations, in government, across the board, we're being very irresponsible in how we're handling this. And the
Correct.
fallout is going to be huge. People's lives are really going to be
People.
impacted, especially when you live in a country that is a consumer-based
Okay.
economy. If I don't have a job, I
Absolutely.
don't have any money, I can't consume your goods, so eventually your business no longer exists. I mean, it's very cyclical, right? So
I'm with you on that. And even about the skilled trades and when I'm talking about that, even, another example organization I was working with when electrical vehicles were being introduced, right? We were starting to do upskilling our mechanics to learn how to prepare the electric vehicles because they were like, what is this? Right. And so though I think that we are going to continue to see that shift, I'm not taking away from those other, as you say, white collar jobs, et cetera. But I think that we are going to have to be more strategic
yes.
about what work is, right?
Yeah.
Really what work is and
Yeah.
the model of how do I say this? I'm going to make sure that my child goes to their kindergarten is $75,000 a year so I can ensure by the time they're in college they get to UCLA or whatever it is.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
I don't want I don't know. I don't know if that now I don't want to speak my daughter went to UCLA so
Right.
I'm not speaking against that. But I guess I'm talking about really really thinking this through
Yeah.
as we see work. And I think that's where HR could really start having these
Yes.
conversations
Yes.
and
Yes.
working in the education system. So I was sharing with you about I sit on an advisory board for a local university, and we had our first summit of talking about higher education and its impact on the workplace. Really could and the research that they're doing about how that higher education impacts the workplace. And I think those are the conversations that are going to have to be had. It was outstanding. Outstanding. And when I was there, I was like, see, this is when we're having these trainings and all of the
Yeah.
HR's associations, and I'm a part of a lot of these are the things we need to start talking about. To your time out, the
I
future of work.
love that you said that, Stacey, because that's where if you think about the role that if HR takes a lesson from the Accentures and the Deloittes and the KPMGs
Hmm.
and that. So as AI came along and all of a sudden companies were like, "Well, I'm not gonna pay these big consulting firms for their information anymore because I literally could use AI," because over the years, they posted all that stuff out there. Well, what did all of those firms do? They shifted to AI, and now they're like, "Well, let me help you with your AI strategy. Let me"
Correct.
they didn't lose any contracts. They still are making millions of dollars. They laid some people off. There's some jobs impacted there, but they pivoted. HR needs to learn how to pivot.
We gotta
And
pivot.
you are absolutely right in what you just said there, that if HR were to take a look at this now, they could be leading the consultation, the conversations around how do we better prepare. Like, I was had a guest on, and she was telling me about IKEA. IKEA, they all were tasked with getting rid of 8,000 workers.
Mm,
They said they had to lay off in their I think it was in their customer service area. I'm guessing they probably were automating it through AI,
mhm.
the agents and that sort of stuff. But that leader was really struggling with the idea of this, but they have to answer to the board. So they did lay off those 8,000 people, but that leader worked with the organization, and they created a program for those 8,000 people to get skilled on becoming interior design consultant, because AI can't give me it can I need that human side, right? I want to talk to
Correct.
somebody. If I don't have the skills,
Correct.
I don't know how to punch it into a computer anymore. I need to talk to someone and go through that. All 8,000 of those people, or however many people there, they got new skills, they got new jobs, and guess what? IKEA got a whole new line of business as well because they work with all of those people. That is innovative thinking around
That
human design, right?
I love that's it. That
Yeah,
is the motto. That's why I'm saying, and I don't want to, again, it's not to offend, but we really don't have time to worry about you need to have the time to take your dog to the vet. Appreciate that. You have PTO time, you have that, and making it our we have weightier matters to ensure that you are in a work environment that you can thrive. And that's where I think those honest conversations have to happen. Not to be offensive, not to say, but the organization has a responsibility to ensure that the workplace is a place where people can thrive. It's psychologically
absolutely.
responsible, not safe.
Yes,
Safe means that only one player does it. It's responsible. Both parties have a
that's true.
responsibility on the psychological piece of it, right? And that you get feedback in a timely fashion, and that it's appropriate, and that you are seen, valued, and heard, and you can be authentic and vulnerable if you choose.
Yep,
Organization is responsible for that.
yep,
Your job, right? That's our responsibility. Your
yes,
happiness, you know, HR Interrupted is not responsible for Linda to be happy. I'll
that's
never
right,
remember.
that's
I told you,
right.
we'll never be. Happiness is so relative.
It
But
is.
what you're talking about, IKEA, there's so many weightier matters out there, and that's where it
Yes,
bleeds my heart that I see on Instagram, and I see on um all of things. Oh my God, my job, and I want to work from home. And I listen, work from home. Let me tell you, you and I grew up. I never, you just said it earlier. I never thought that we'd be able to have that flexibility, and I think it's
oh
a great
gosh,
one.
no.
I
I do
think
too.
that
Yeah,
I'm so
I love
pleased
yeah,
that we have this opportunity. You and I grew up where you just worked, you
yeah.
worked and you worked, and
And you
that
maybe
was not the
drove
right model.
45 minutes, or an hour to your job, every day. You lost 2 hours of commute time that could have been spent working. Smarter
Correct.
things could have been done then, but
That
you
was
did what you were told to do because there was no other option
correct.
but to do that. So,
And I don't think that was the right model, right? I
no,
think
I
it
don't think so
breeded,
either.
people who were disgruntled and I don't know,
Yes.
whatever. And so it's been a shift, and I like the shift that we are that there is we're recognizing the whole human's person as it relates to life, work, integration. Don't come with me with this work life balance because there's no such thing. There's no such thing as work life balance. It starts with your life. You live and you work. Work
Yes.
and you integrate the two. And I
That's
like
right.
what I'm seeing in this space. But the integration can't just be the employer doing, and you're not.
Mm-mm.
That's why that
No.
honesty comes in. And to your point, I love what you said about IKEA. We have some weightier matter. HR has to take the lead. But let me just put something out here for you, Linda.
Yeah.
HR part of it too. We the ones all talking about I can't come in, I'm not gonna come in, I'm not gonna do, they gotta reach me, I'm not gonna find this, I'm
Yes.
not gonna work these hours, I can't figure it out. They gonna have to
Yep.
when
Yep.
you sign up to be in HR, I'm gonna say it and I'll say it again,
Yes.
you're not everybody else.
No,
And this is what
you
I
aren't.
talk
I
to.
agree with you. That is such a
You
great point. Yes.
HR, you are not everybody else in the organization.
Yes.
You cannot be. The responsibility that you have You can change the trajectory of somebody's life by a decision that you make or by information that you're exposed to. You can't just be, oh, well, no,
No, I totally
no.
agree. Mm-mm,
So
nope.
if you want to talk
There are
about the
certain
future
jobs
of
like
work,
that. Yes.
we
Mhm.
need to also see who's coming into this space, who's
That's
being
true.
HR practitioners, because you're going to have the technology and the
Yes.
touch, the
And the touch.
technology
Yeah.
and the touch. And you're going to
Yes.
have to be the ones who are in there advocating, being
Yes.
innovative, looking at work, taking a step back,
Yeah.
having the honest conversations, even
Mhm.
when they don't feel right, right? If
No.
this is
No.
what you want to do, HR is
I
just not a job.
Nope, it is not just a
And
job.
I'll,
Yeah, and take some solace in the idea that AI can actually automate like, think about when you got your certification, Stacey, 90% of that was all on reading all the policies
yep,
and why this decision was made and all of that, right? That was what it was all for. Well, guess what? You don't have to focus on that now
you
because it can
don't.
all be in the system. AI
Right.
can automate all of those components for you, create that whole catalog for you. That is an awesome thing to have happen because now you and I can just have an honest conversation.
Correct.
I can bring that human side of it. I can have that innovation because I don't have to spend all of my time worrying about, um, some law that was passed in 1967 that I gotta go look up and see how it impacts
Mhm.
me today type of thing. There's a lot of things that is a benefit to that if you embrace
Absolutely.
it, and that's the difference, right? You can fight it and resist it, and to your point too, you can have this idea. It'd be like going into being a police officer or a firefighter and saying, "Well, I only wanna work from, 8 to 5, and I'm going home at
Yeah.
the end of my shift, regardless of what's going on." Then don't be a firefighter or a police officer, and don't be in HR if you don't
Correct.
want to deal with humans. I mean, because that is a huge mistake.
Well, because you're responsible for the organization's most valuable asset.
Yes, you
Like, I mean, I
are.
think that's how we have. When you are in human resources, human asset, whatever, you are responsible for organization's most valuable asset. And I love that analogy that you use because I say that in HR. When I talk to next leaders, I say, your job is to protect and serve. Just like police officers, you're to protect and to serve the employees. And let me help you when I'm talking about employees from your CEO on down. See, HR, sometimes you too consciously or unconsciously build into this us versus them. You are an employee too. The CEO on down, the whole entire gamut, right? And you build into that piece of it. And for AI, you're right. But and even with using that as a tool, HR practitioners, you still got to know it because you got to some things you got to look, you got to vet.
Yes,
Come on,
yes,
HR
yes.
is you just right? AI deals it out right in the certification. That's a
Yep,
love that I really wish we had at that time. But you still need to just look at it, right? Because
yeah.
AI is putting out what's been put in.
That's
You
right, 'cause garbage
still
in,
have to
garbage
look at
out,
that.
it's still the same thing. You're absolutely right. You still have to know it, you still have to have that, but maybe I don't have to have it memorized anymore, maybe it
Correct.
doesn't have to be in my back pocket for all of this. I can go and look up if I need a refresher on something, I can go and look these things up. There's a benefit to that. And, I was thinking about this, as well with all these layoffs that are going on. I've heard several leaders who have made the comment, "There's no good way to go about doing this." That's their, reasoning behind poorly handling a layoff. Like, I know there was a lot of, FUD out there about Oracle, that they just sent those emails at 6 a.m. and, all of that. When I look at all of this stuff, you're right. There is no good way to tell people that their jobs have been eliminated, but there are better ways to tell people that their jobs are being eliminated than
Yes.
sending an email or saying, "Well, we're a large organization, so being able to have that one-on-one isn't possible." Not true. I worked for a company years ago that was a global organization as well. We had to do some hard layoffs, but you know what? our HR team, we led the efforts behind all of this. We met with our leaders. We talked about the best approach to keep the humanity in what was about to happen. We talked to our leaders and prepared them for what was going to happen.
That's
We
right.
talked to the managers whose jobs were going to be eliminated, but who had to lead through their employees being eliminated
Yes.
first, and then they
Yes.
were going to be gone. We had those conversations. We were open and transparent. Did it make laying off those people any easier? Absolutely not. But the people who were laid off, they felt so much better about being treated like a human
Yes.
being process instead of just getting. So when I hear those statements, there's no good way, I'm like, then your HR might have failed you, or you didn't listen to your HR. You never went to your HR to talk to them, because no, there's no good way, but I guarantee you there's better ways.
Linda, that is the blockbuster statement of the hour. There are better ways.
Yeah.
And you and I both know, again, when we start getting back to this human piece, and I'm going to hold HR accountable, that everything is sent by email. Everything is sent by email.
Everything is email or SharePoint. Now
Or
everything is a
yeah,
SharePoint site.
SharePoint. Go to
Yes.
SharePoint, or
Yep.
everything by the email, or I'm a MS Teams. I'm a
Yes.
Teams
Slack.
you.
Yeah, whatever.
Slack.
Yep. Yep.
That's that piece. And I think we've allowed that to just be how we
Yeah.
communicate. I was talking to a client, true story, and she said that a person came in for the interview, and in the middle of the interview, their phone went off and they answered a text. Like,
Oh, wow.
you see what I'm saying? But
Yes.
where would the person know? Tell me, Linda, where would they
Yeah.
know that would not have been an acceptable trait? Because that's
true.
their existence.
That is very true.
So
Yes.
that whole thing. So as I am talking, 40 years, people say I'm old school. Just had the situation a couple of days ago. You and I are so much online. Person called me and said, that's not an email. I need you to get up from your desk, because I collaborate with a lot of HR contributors, and I'm so honored to be in that space, because if
Yeah.
anybody needs a collaborator, also known as a coach, is
does.
HR.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay?
100%. Yes.
You should be negotiating. For those of you who are listening, I'm going to give a PSA. For those of you who are listening and you are HR and you're going to your next opportunity, negotiate 2 things in your contract: a coach and a therapist.
Oh, yes.
Leave money on the table.
Glad you called that out.
Put
Yep.
those 2 things in your contract, okay?
Yep. Very good.
That in HR, your
Yep.
leaders, I personally think that anybody, but we'll get into that.
Yes,
But definitely
yeah.
HR,
Yes.
a coach and a therapist. Okay,
Yep.
let's get back. My PSA announcement is over. So I told the person, I said, I need you to get up from your desk, because you need to look at that person eye to eye. Well, I
Yes.
said,
Nope.
no. See, you the leader, and
Yep.
you want to hide behind the email, right? And at some point, somebody has to be the person to address this in the situation,
That's
and
right.
it's you.
Yep.
So I said, do not respond with an email.
Mm-mm.
Don't even call. Get up from your desk
Mhm.
and go knock on the door. So,
Yep.
she said, read back to me later. She goes, oh my gosh, you were so right. I'm so glad you did that. I said, every model doesn't work. You got to, this is where you're talking about that. I'm going to use that provenness in work, right? Because I don't want to offend, because if people say, oh, that provenness in work. You got to know the situation. This is one thing in HR we got to teach. This is where we come in.
It is.
You
I
got to
agree.
read the situation. Every situation is not an email. Every
Yes.
situation may not be a phone call. Every
Yeah.
situation is not a text. Every
Nope.
situation, right? You got to know the audience, and not only know the audience, you got to know what's the end result that you're looking for. You laying
Yes.
somebody off who's worked for your company 40 years, and you want to tell me because you laying off 500 people, you send them an email? Are you
Yes.
crazy? Oh, sorry. I mean, I use
Exactly.
that word. Sorry. I don't want to enable it.
Well, I will say, are you crazy? I
Are
totally
you-
agree with you. Yeah.
what are you?
Yeah.
There is a better way.
There is a
And you're
better
right.
way.
HR,
Yep.
this is where we come in. If you laying off, okay, so let's just work. If you laying off 1,000 people,
Mhm.
then clearly you got a strong HR presence.
Yep.
HR, let's go. Somebody going to Dallas, somebody's going
Exactly.
to California,
That's right.
somebody going to
That's right.
Seattle, somebody's going. you have your conversation, you bring your
Yep.
HR team together, because we knew in 2026 that we were going to lay people off in February 2027. So
Yes,
why are we acting like
exactly.
now we got to rush? Am I lying,
Yes,
Linda? Why are we acting like we
you
got
are
to rush
not.
this?
I have exciting news. The Her Resources podcast is opening sponsorships. If your brand supports women in HR and leadership, think talent, well-being, learning, pay equity, coaching, productivity, or mission-driven tech. This is your moment. Our listeners are decision makers and change makers who show up for real conversations and practical tools every week. We offer flexible options, pre-roll or mid-roll host reads, series sponsorships, and thought leadership integrations that highlight your story without the fluff. Ready to connect with a highly engaged audience and grow with us? Email contact@herresourcespodcast.com and put sponsorship in the subject line. I can't wait to collaborate. No, there is not one of those companies that have gone through layoffs that made that decision within 24 hours. They said, "Oop, we got to lay off all these people, so we'll just do it via email and we're just going to randomly send that stuff out to them." No. And what a terrible position you put your leaders in when you have not they don't even know their own their own teammates, or the people who work for them are
Correct.
losing their jobs. How do you not communicate that to them? How does that you think that makes them feel as leaders as well? It's very the whole process is just dehumanizing and
Mhm,
demoralizing when you
mhm.
take that approach. So I don't ever whenever leaders say that, I'm always like, well, you
Right.
clearly did not consult your HR, or if you did, you've got the wrong HR leaders because there are so many better ways
Or
to do it.
sometimes they don't even listen.
Yes.
You know, sometimes they don't
And
listen
that's
to
the other side.
HR.
To be fair, you're absolutely right. Sometimes HR does say, and the leader says, I don't care. This is how we're going to do it. So, yeah,
Yeah, they don't, they don't. Yeah, sometimes they don't listen, and then that's why
that
you
is
get
true.
you see on the social media, HR sucks, right? HR,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
you didn't
Because
know that
HR
Linda and
is a,
Stacey
yeah,
were back there for 5 hours saying
that's
that's not the way to
right.
do it. That's not the way to do it. And this is what I want to say. We're talking about the future of work. We still on topic.
Yeah,
Shame on you as a leader take, if you don't regard HR enough to at least consider what we're saying. Like,
exactly.
that's part of
Yes.
it. The HR people are like, I just have to have you. What do you have to say? I'm not going to do it my way. I don't want to hear what you have to say.
Yep, I've already made the decision. This is what I'm gonna do kinda thing. No, I totally agree, with that, and so, I mean, I think that's where, to your point, kind of bringing it back to what we were talking about, kind of where
Hmm.
we started with the future of work. All of this factors into the future of work, though,
Hmm.
because what we're talking about is there is a gap in leadership, there is a gap in the reskilling reality.
Hmm.
I read somewhere only 50% of workers have access to reskilling, and it says that companies who actually invest in development see a 94% higher retention because you also, as a leader, know those jobs are going to change. We've been talking about it for a long time now. It's not like, again, that this just all of a sudden came onto the scene. We've known that AI was going to reshape how we were going to operate in our organizations. And I know that it's moving faster than probably anyone expected it to, but that's kind of your job in those roles as leaders to be monitoring and and keeping track of these trends. So you know that these things are happening. Don't you then think that it's your responsibility to then prepare your workforce, even if it is that people's jobs you may have to eliminate some jobs. Maybe you have to tell them you do need to be reskilled, because I often wonder too when I see organizations who get rid of the people who don't have the skills for the future of work, then they're hiring people who do. Why didn't you give that person the chance to get those skills when you knew that the job was going to change? You had the opportunity to do that then. So that's where I really scratch my head and I'm like, who are you building the future of work for? Is it really just about dollars and cents? Because that's kind of what it feels like, is that what we're building the future for is for corporations to make more money. But what are we doing for the workers who are impacted by all of this and had their role in what that transformation looks like? I mean, there is a responsibility in all of that.
Oh, Linda. Oh, you like to get me in trouble. No, I'm just
Uh,
kidding. Listen, you said something a few minutes ago that I'm not going to let you leave out there. You said it is HR's responsibility to track trends,
That's
look
right.
at the future.
Yeah.
You are 100% right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're going to speak the truth.
Yeah.
It is difficult for HR, and I'm going to say both sides. It's difficult for
Of
HR to
course,
do
yeah.
that
That's
when
why I
all
love
your
having
people
you
want
here
you to
because you
do
bring that other perspective. Yes,
when all your
exactly.
people want you to do is recruit. Come on, I'm going to talk real.
That is
It's
very
difficult for you to look at business because every HR should know, they should know the organization's priorities. They should know the budget like they know rules and like they know Title VII. The organizations, right? They should know, right? They should know the organization that way. As much as you know California law, AB 125, Title VII, you should know your organization's budget. You should be able tracking trends. You should be looking at forecasting what's going on in your industry. What HR should be able to do that. But that is hard when hiring managers knock on your doors all day long. When I'm gonna get this recruitment,
yes.
when I'm gonna get that recruitment, all I'm gonna do get the recruitment. Oh my God, over here, my person don't want to return to the office. I got 15 accommodations. Oh my God, I gotta go over here. The benefits. We're
That is
still
true.
so transactional.
So transactional. You're absolutely right. And that's where I think that HR has the opportunity to create the balance in all of this, where their organization allows to come in and embrace the AI and even drive the AI, drive
Yes.
the AI to get rid of the transactional components, but at the same time, make sure that you as an HR professional are also evolving your skills to then be
Yes.
able to move to the next level. So when you bring in AI to get rid of all of those transactions, you better also then be prepared to make sure that your leadership knows that's okay because my role has now adjusted. And I know that's what the purpose of Josh Berson's, I think it was called the Great HR Restructure or something he wrote back. I'll link it in the show notes about it. But it was around this idea that HR has to evolve. So to your point, if we're still talking about having a seat at the table, well, you're so last year, right? That's
Right.
an old conversation. It's too late to be talking about that anymore. What you need to be talking about now is the future and building that future, not only for your for the employees that you support, but for yourself to preserve what HR actually can and should be bringing to the organization, right?
So, right. So you and I talked earlier. So with that point, really also looking at the skill sets that's required for the next era of HR contributors,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes,
Metrics, data. You're gonna have
yes.
to be able to you're gonna have to be able to do,
You are gonna have to be
understand
able to
data,
do that. You're right.
metrics,
Yes.
data, technology, right? You're still gonna have to have strong engagement skills, right? But you're going to
Yes,
be able to you we got to look at the whatever we want to call the MQs, whatever. We have to look at that differently, right?
that's true.
Because
Yeah.
of where work is moving forward. And we will still need those engagement skills. You're still going to need to be able to
Absolutely.
communicate. You're still going to be able to leave people feeling good about themselves in a courageous conversation, whether, if they choose. Like all of those things, you're going to have to be wise. You're going to have to be
Yes.
skillful, right? You're going to have to be
Yep.
able to read rooms, right? You're going to have
Absolutely.
to have a sense of, authenticity and vulnerability yourself, right? You're going to
Yeah.
all of these things. And though you're going to have to be able to plan. And so these
Yes.
roles that we even have in HR are going to look very, very, very different. And I don't
They
even want
are.
to bring in right now public sector. They're so,
No, oh gosh,
oh
no,
my
they are.
gosh. I
Yes, I
mean,
agree. They lagging behind
oh,
in
but
all of
you
those
know what?
conversations.
That's also a detriment because communities, right? Public sectors are where kind of
Yes,
where jobs in the futures could really be, right? So, but
they
they're going to
could.
have to pick
Yep.
up, they're going to have to move forward. So, that reskilling, I really like what you're talking about that organizations doing that. And how are you
Yeah.
doing true reskilling?
And
Stacey
and that's
Lewis,
it. Yes, how are you doing true reskilling? I totally agree. And the only way to reskill is you have to actually know what my skills are in the first place, right?
you have to know what my skills are. And then also you might want to know what my interests are. Okay. So
Oh
I'm
my
a
god.
cookie.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
an
Oh,
HR practitioner,
yep.
right? But you know what? In HR, I do really well. I write our newsletter and I do a really good job, right?
Yeah.
I've always had an interest of maybe doing something along the lines of, I mean, maybe let's just say I'm just doing about
Yeah.
communications,
Yeah.
right? And so in our new infrastructure, we're going to build out a whole, now communications are going to be relegated, right? Know what my interests and my skills are and reskill
Yes.
around that. Here's
Yes.
another thing I'm going to say, and I know people don't like to hear this, but I started this conversation at my last organization. We also might need to reskill for the industry.
Yes. Very, very true.
Okay, let that
Yes.
sit for a moment, okay?
Mhm.
So I worked for an organization and I was sharing with them, this was right before I said, we're a global industry.
Yep.
And how wonderful would it be if we could say the next CEO at this
Mhm.
company came out of our organization and we
Yeah.
gave them tools to do
Yeah.
that. So we were starting to talk about doing some cross pollinations and
Yeah.
academies and things of that nature. But you might have to retool for the industry, even though they won't be able to work at HRI anymore. I
Yep.
know that Linda Incorporated has this need, and so the skill set stays in it. If you really want to talk about the future of work, we could really have the conversation. But I think we're going
Yeah.
places that people are not ready. Let's reskill
No.
for the industry. I
Yep.
got to
I
keep mine. I got to
agree.
keep mine. Well, you're laying off 8,000 people, and you know
Mm.
that Linda needs 5,000. Why can't
Yeah.
we call over to Linda? We in the same business and say, hey, I'm going to lay off about 8,000 people. Do you have a need?
That's right.
Do the
That's
people have to
right.
go through? Do they have to go through LinkedIn? Do they have to go through
Right.
Indeed? Where do
Yes,
we
could
have
we
these?
just make this better, easier? I like that you
That's
just
that
said that
human
too.
design. You see what I'm
That is our
saying?
human design, you're absolutely and that's where we hear all the time CEOs talk to other CEOs. They're always talking about the businesses, what's going on. So you know that the conversations are supposedly being had, right? So if you're talking about other stuff, why couldn't you talk about that as well? I think that's a really great point, you know? I mean, yes, if my business is being impacted, maybe somebody else needs it. We kept hearing for a long time, "Oh, there's just a shortage of workers." No, there was not a shortage of workers. I'm sorry. That is not
Right.
true. I think that but exactly what you said there wouldn't that speed up the whole process too? Imagine how much quicker you could onboard, especially if you
Yes.
needed,
I
100 people, you could do that just like that.
If you knew we share industries, and that's why I'm so passionate about this. I know people are like, "Oh my gosh, she's so over the top." I am when it comes to this because we could just do some things around human-centered design. I feel
Yeah.
Oracle laid off all those individuals. I'm just throwing 1,000
Yep,
people. Oracle
yep,
is a big name company. I
yep.
guarantee you, okay?
Yes.
Hey, partner with because I keep hearing that I'm just saying the city of Stacey
Ye
Lewis, you all have been looking for IT people for the last. Hey, do
yes.
we have some synergy here? What can we do? Like, let's really be creative in this
Yes.
space as
Yep.
opposed to putting people out. That's why I'm telling employees, and I'm gonna say it again: stop with this. It's about me. You ain't paying for my whatever, and be part of the conversation. Be
Yes.
part of the
Yes.
conversation. Mama ain't
I
gonna take care of
totally
you when
agree.
all you do is complain,
No, no, nope, nope, nope,
right?
especially in a time when they're looking at what jobs can we replace with these new tools. The people that are complaining the loudest will also be the ones who will be the first to go, especially when they're complaining about things like that. I mean, if you're complaining about real things that, you don't have the right tools to do your job effectively, that's a much different
That's a
conversation
much different
than you're not paying
conversation.
for my childcare or you're not allowing me to have time to go do this during work hours, those conversations are much different than when I'm saying I literally don't have the skills or the tools to do my job effectively. So,
Here's one more thing I'll also say about work. Linda, you be having me on here
yeah, I love having
because you
you
know
on
I
here.
love
Are
it.
you kidding?
Listen,
Yes.
if you want to talk about the future work, here's another thing I'm gonna say to you. Um, I also think we need to look about how we do work. What do you mean about that? Police, I said this to you before. Fire, maybe police, fire, manufacturing, some company, they work 24 hours. I do data entry. I put in all the payroll for HR Interrupted. Who said that has to be done 8 o'clock in the morning?
That's right. That's
Who
right.
said that?
Doesn't matter. Yep, nobody. Nobody just
If I have
made
a
up
rote
some
task,
arbitrary rule.
arbitrary
Yep.
rule from the foundation of the system, who says
Yes,
that I have to put payroll in at 8 o'clock in the morning? Maybe
absolutely.
I'm more diligent. Maybe I could do
Yeah,
a graveyard. I'm
absolutely.
be creative in this space. We've done
Yes.
it like, and that's what, and so that's why I'm telling employees, if you want to use your power, and I don't want power, but use your input in that space. Who says that? I'm such an advocate of this. I even did this during when we started, COVID. I told my team, I said, listen, you just need to give me 8 hours.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Yep.
8 hours and meet your deliverables. I don't care if you do it at 3 o'clock in the morning. 8 hours
Exactly. Yes,
and make
yes.
sure you meet these deadlines. I'm not going to push the deadlines.
Yep,
They were like, Stacey, thank you so much. These future of work. This is
yep.
what we could be talking about.
Absolutely.
How can we create a workplace? Remember, the organization
Yeah,
responsible for creating a workplace where people can thrive. I
yeah.
do data entry. I key in all of the names of the new hire employees. Who says that I got to do that? Okay, we have meetings. Okay, meetings are during the daytime, right?
Yep.
Obviously, you have some flexibility. Stacey, we're going to have a staff meeting. So for this time, you need to meet. This is the time where the majority of the staff we're going to be there.
Right.
Maybe a staff said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to have our staff meeting at 9. Our families are
Yep.
down, whatever's down, and the staff meeting's at 9 o'clock at night." Now, I'm not even talking about collective bargainings and unions. I get all
Yeah,
that. You know
exactly.
what I'm
Yep,
talking
yep,
about.
yep, yep,
If everybody on the team could meet at 9 o'clock at night,
yep.
what's the problem?
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's a really good point. A friend of mine, Christine Ferns, she's got a consulting company, and one of her hiring practices was to hire women who had taken time away to have a child or whatever, or raise their children even, and now they were coming back into the workforce. But they
Mhm,
still, like
mhm,
working 9 to 5 was still hard because they still have responsibilities to their families that they wanted to be do. So exactly what you said. She modified the work schedules to say, listen, if you can work because as long as you're there if the client has to have a meeting, you're there for
correct.
that meeting. But then
That's
when you're
correct.
doing the work, I don't care if you want to do it at midnight, if you want to do it at 5 o'clock in the morning, take your time to go do what you got to do. And then you want to log back on after dinner. She
Right.
didn't care because it was about the deliverable and the outcome, not
That's
about
it.
being there from 9 to 5. But to your point too, it's about people understanding that there isn't when we talk about fairness and equity in jobs and people want to say, well, how come I can't do that? Well, not every job is the same. So if you
Not
work at
every
a
job is the
job that
same.
is customer service that requires you to be there from 9 to 5, then that's what the job is.
That's the
But if
job.
you are in a
Exactly.
position where they have that where you can have more flexible work schedule, where you can do those sorts of things, then that's what that job is. And so I think that's also where we were talking about the responsibility of the employee. If you don't like the job, don't ask the job to change. Look for a different job because if that role is only for that time, then guess what? That's the only time you get to work it.
Can you say that one more time, Linda? Please say that one more time. Repeat what you just said.
Yes, if you are as an employee, if you do not like that's the hours for that job, do not expect the job to change. Find a different job. You have but we all have choices, right? We make the choice. So if I make the choice to work for a job that requires me to be there from 8 to 5, then it is not fair for me to go into my employer and tell them that they need to change that job now to be from whatever time I want to work that job.
Correct.
It doesn't work that way, but I could find a different job that maybe is more accommodating to my schedule.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I love what your coworker did about that flexibility. And I do think that
Yeah,
there's a flexibility and we should do that. But you hit the mark. With that flexibility comes responsibility. See, I can't let you have
absolutely.
the flexibility and then when it's time to have the deliverable, you come telling me about you don't have it. That's
Exactly.
where we have, and that's where the trouble is. I think organizations can definitely be flexible.
Yes.
I'm going to be flexible with you, Linda. I honor your life work integration. I honor that.
Mhm.
That's my, but your end of the deal is on Friday at 5 o'clock. You have to have your report done.
That's right.
Things do happen every now and then, but every Friday you can't come saying
Mm-mm.
that you don't have your
No.
report. Because then now when I need to put you in a position you're more productive, then I something wrong with me. I don't honor your thing. It
Yes.
is still work.
It is
That's all I'm saying.
still
It's still
work.
work.
Nope, I totally agree with you. No. Well, and I think that what I think you and I have gotten at in this conversation here is that the future of work is everyone's responsibility, right? It is
Everyone's.
we're not neither one of us have said that it's all on the CEO of the company to figure it all out. We're not putting it all on HR and we're not putting it all on the worker, but all of us have a responsibility in determining what does the future of work truly look
Yes.
like? And maybe to your point, what do we want it to look like?
What?
There is an opportunity, even as an employee, to have a voice in
Yes.
all of this as well, right? I can bring my ideas and I can talk. And then that's where I expect my leaders to have that. When you say you got an open door policy, well, then you better have an
That's
open door
that's
policy.
right.
So when
That's right.
people come and they bring their ideas, then you have to hear what they're saying and listen to it. You don't have to take every idea, but at least validate it because you made some of your best ideas are sitting out there in that workforce who doesn't
That's
think they
right.
have a voice.
Linda, I think what a great way. Sounds like we're getting close. I love that. You hit the future of work. What's confronting HR now? Everybody has a responsibility of how
Yeah.
it's designed. There has to be some intentionality on how it's designed. There has to be some intentionality on who's going to benefit from it. The reskilling part is very important. What can be done, what should be
Yes.
done, the use of AI as a tool. You did a beautiful job in saying AI can assist in some of these
Yeah.
in HR, maybe some of those rote things that we have so we can
Yeah.
be out there looking at trends, right? How are we doing that? And then how are we evolving from a strategic perspective, but still
Yes.
having that human centered design?
Absolutely.
Everybody, the employer, the employee, from the CEO on down, HR, practitioners, please stop allowing the divisiveness in your organization to say management and us. No,
Yes.
everybody's an employee because your CEO get a check just like
That's right.
everybody else.
That's right.
Let's start breaking down some of these barriers that we put in. It's not management. Oh man, no, it is
Yes.
a person who serves in a leadership capacity.
That's right. That's right.
And that's how we have to design a future. We have to get everybody at the table. I love what you said about the employees. Any
Yeah.
organization right now, they should have a employee centered, right, of how the future of work is. Have an HR on
Yes.
there. What are your thoughts? Even the 8 to 5. I would even say with
Even
the
the 8 to
customer service
5.
job,
Yes. Yeah.
there might be a way that we can do that. We can really take a step back and look at jobs and say, okay, does this job really, like what jobs really have to, right? And be honest with it,
Yes.
right? Do some job analysis and
Mhm.
because the job is the way we can do that. But it has to be an open and honest conversation. And at the end of the day, the employer has a responsibility to say, hey, this might not be one. Because the employer does not accept maybe your thought process doesn't mean that you were not heard. Like
No.
there has to be a balance. And then employer, like you said, listen to the employees because a lot of
Listen.
times the employee, and when I say employees, because again, I don't want to start up us versus them, but key
Nope.
individual contributors who may not serve
Yes.
in leadership roles, they
Yep.
have some really good voices. And
They
so,
do.
if I could leave anything, any of you who's in HR right now, let's dismantle that us versus them. Employees can say you're all employees, key
Yeah.
individual contributors, employees who serve in leadership roles. That's
Yep.
kind of what you have. That you don't have anybody else in the
Absolutely.
organization. So,
Nope.
I
That is
love,
absolutely true. I love this.
ma'am.
I always love having you on, and this
Thank
what I
you.
wanna tell everybody, this is one of those conversations that doesn't end when this episode does, because the future of work isn't something that's happening somewhere else. It's
Right.
being shaped right now inside organizations, inside leadership teams, and very often inside your HR organization, and the truth is Like I said, it's not neutral. The decisions being made today will determine who has opportunity and who doesn't. So make sure your voice is out there and being heard. And Stacey, thank you always for bringing honesty and perspective to this conversation. I mean, because these aren't easy topics. These are hard things
Yeah.
to talk about. They make people uncomfortable. And I love that you're comfortable with getting uncomfortable with me in these conversations. And for all of you out there, this is not the end of this conversation because Stacey and I are going to come back and we're going to talk about dismantling systems. And so, because that is going to be the key to how we build the future of work as well,
Has
is
to.
taking those systems apart. So we'll be back for that. In the meantime, though, Stacey, how can people get in touch with you?
Thank you. HR Interrupted. Ironic, my company's called HR Interrupted, right? HRinterrupted.com and on all social media, HR Interrupted. And Linda, thank you so much for the work that you're doing here, right, in this
Oh, thank
podcast.
you.
It's much needed. Again, the HR community is one that is often just well, for whatever reason, overlooked. And so the
I
way that
agree.
even if just one person benefits from this, we've done the work,
I
right? But I
agree.
think
I
the
always feel that way. Yes. One
we're,
person. Yep.
but we know that people are listening, and we know that this is something that you have to sit with for a little bit by sitting in that
Yeah.
discomfort. But we are
Absolutely.
the ones who are going to have to take this forward. So, Linda, please keep knocking down the door. Please having the honest conversations, and please continue to always allow the diversity of perspective, right? The
Yes.
representation of perspective. Everybody, you don't have to agree,
Nope.
but the one thing that I aspire you to do is at least acknowledge that
Yes.
there could be a different way. That's
Absolutely.
all.
I totally agree with you. Well, I
Right.
hope all of our listeners, if you like this episode as much as I did, I encourage you to share it. These conversations are
Yeah.
ones we need more of in leadership rooms everywhere, I think. And so make sure you're following the Her Resources podcast so you don't miss what comes next. And as always, keep leading with intention, and we'll see you next time.